Hey guys, it's Savine from Merch.com. People often ask me, I have this much money, should I be investing? It's not such a simple question to answer as it depends on your situation. So I'll show you how to decide whether you should flip or invest. This is ultimately a matter of merchanting more efficiently and learning how to manage your wealth. So it's very important to understand this. It's really what makes a difference between an okay merchant and a really good merchant. First off, we need to look at your flipping and get an estimation of how much money you can make per day and how much per week. You should exclude the very lucky start from your calculations, as you can't rely on that happening all the time. But you have to include your losses, as those will always be there. Now let's say you have 200 mil and you make 10 mil profit per day from flipping on average. If you then come across an interesting item to short-term invest in for 2 days with 100 mil, you would need to make more than 10 mil profit in 2 days, so 5 mil per day, for it to be worth your time, money, and effort. If you think you can do that, or make even more, then you should go for it. If not, then you should just stick with flipping, unless you really want to get some investing experience. So what if you're better at flipping? You have 200 mil, but you can make 20 mil profit per day on average. You would then need to make at least 20 mil from a 2-day short-term investment with 100 mil, and that's not going to be very easy. So you will likely want to keep flipping in that case. You will find that for this reason, you generally won't really be investing much until you are wealthier. At lower wealth levels, it's extremely easy to make more money from flipping than from investing because the pool of interesting items is a lot bigger and you have less wealth to manage. Now, once people reach higher wealth, however, the amount of interesting items to flip or invest in shrinks a lot. So everyone is kind of focused on a smaller group of items, which narrows down the margins and makes it harder to get the same return on investment as you did at your lower wealth. Now when you have 50 mil, it's easy to double it to 100 mil in a week time at most, but when you have 5 bill, you can't double that to 10 bill anytime soon. This brings us to the next question: what happens when you become wealthier? Of course, that's great, but what actually happens, like in terms of merchanting? The rules for investing kind of change then as your profit becomes hyperbolic. This basically means that having more money doesn't necessarily make you much more. With 1 bill, you might be able to make 30 mil per day, but with 2 bill it may be just 35 mil. In reality, you might have expected that to be 60 mil because after all it's twice the amount of money to work with, but this also means that you have to put in more effort and you have to compete with more experienced merchants, so it's not as easy to get the same kind of returns. So instead of using that extra 1 bill to make an additional 5 mil per day, you may want to move it to another account and flip on that. Or you can break it up into smaller amounts and do short or long-term investments with those. If you can then make 30 mil profit per day from flipping using your first 1 bill, and an additional 20 mil per day investing with the other 1 bill, then you're making 50 mil per day and you're getting a lot of experience in investing, which will become increasingly important later on. Now what happens in reality, however, is that most people will just keep flipping and complaining about bad profits. But just because you can afford the next expensive item doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing to do. If you can flip third H pieces for 5 mil each, for example, why would you bother with a party hat for 10 mil if they cost dozens of times more as a third H piece? You have a lot of people out there flipping Santas for 500k, for example, with 130 mil. That's absurd considering you can flip a next item for 500k with only 10 mil. Why would you ever bother with a Santa? Now the same thing goes for a bonus XP weekend. If you invest 1 bill 4 months in advance to get a 30% profit, you really don't understand how merchanting works. If you can make just 10 mil profit per day through flipping with 1 bill, then it would only take you 1 month to make the same 300 mil profit. So why on earth would you park 1 bill cash in an item for 4 months unless you're literally talking about dozens of billions in your account? You should really start thinking about how you're using your money because you're throwing away so much potential by flipping the wrong items or investing for too long when it's not really worth doing. So how do you find a sweet spot where you should break up your wealth? It's quite simple. You have to note down how much profit you're making per day and per week. Once you notice that more wealth isn't really getting you much more profit for a while, you should really look into the point where you were last satisfied with your flipping. You can then use the additional cash from that point onwards to invest with. For example, if you're making 25 mil per day from flipping with 500 mil, but you already made 20 mil per day with 300 mil, then you could consider using 200 mil for investments. Any profit that you will make from flipping from that point on can still be used for flipping, so you can gradually raise the bar and see if you can do better this time. On the side, you will always be investing in that case though. On the other hand, if you feel like you're doing amazing with flipping, then you can shift over some of your cash that you are using for investments to flipping for a while until you're hitting a roof again where you're not making much more profit than in the past. You should really keep evaluating yourself and try to find this balance point between how much you want to use for flipping and how much for investing. If you do this, you have to keep in mind that investing is not always the answer. It's also possible that you didn't pick your flipping items well ever since you had that initial 300 mil, for example. You have to be honest with yourself and really look into what you do right and what you do wrong. If you struggle to find good items to invest in, for example, then maybe you don't have enough flipping experience yet. You need to be honest with yourself about that. Now, as long as you keep track of your daily and weekly profits, you can keep a good overview of how well you are progressing, how well you're managing your wealth, and that will ultimately help you to decide whether you need to flip more, invest more, or use more accounts. This becomes the biggest challenge once you get into the billions, as you can't keep expanding accounts forever, of course, as the effort becomes too high. But it's a lot of fun to try and manage a bunch of accounts with a lot of money on them, as it becomes kind of a strategy game. That's personally what I enjoy the most about merchanting. I hope that through all the videos on this channel and this one, you will eventually get to that point and experience the real fun. Best of luck, guys. I'll see you all again next week for another video.